Good morning, friends. Good morning. Good to be with you this morning. Today is Monday. Monday, or no, it's not. Wow. Today is Tuesday. I'm still, I'm still wiped from the weekend, I think, or something from Easter. So it is not Monday. It is Tuesday. Excuse me one moment. Forgot to silence something off to the side that was making too much noise for me. I was hearing things. Oh man. All right. But it's Tuesday, and it's good to be here with you this morning. Thank you for joining me, friends. And well, Facebook says we've already got 5 people. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So let me know who you are. Haven't seen anybody checking in yet. Say hello to me. Say hello to each other. Say good morning, whatever it is. So I'll start that. Good morning. I'm Brian. I'm the pastor here at Christ United Methodist Church in Waynesboro. And I don't know why some days, and I do this almost always in the same place, right? My office here at the church. And I don't move the screen or anything behind me, but some days just gets really glary and stuff behind me. The lighting doesn't change. I guess I need to change my background. Maybe it's because it's a plastic thing. I'll change it to a fabric. That's an interesting thought. If I change it to fabric, maybe it won't do that. Anyway, I digress. It's good to be back this morning. Thanks for putting up with a couple of videos over the weekend, Sunday and yesterday. But we're back to live today. And today we'll be doing, today is day 8 of Mark. So we're looking at chapter 8 of Mark. After today, we'll be halfway through. There we are. Good to see you. Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Maureen. Good morning, Ron. Ooh, I must be on the big screen. Good morning, Tracy, joining us from down south. Good morning, Cheryl. Good to see you this morning. Oh, and hello, Marilyn. Yes. Peace to all. Peace to everyone. I do pray that you had a wonderful and blessed Easter holiday. Perhaps spending time with friends and family and spending time with God. Spending time with God for sure. Good morning, Cindy. And I know a lot of you joined our worship experiences. Some of you joined in person, and I know others of you joined online, and that's wonderful. We're glad that you were doing that with us. So, Mark chapter 8. This week, as I recall, this week should be a good week for me. Should be live every day at 9 o'clock, including Friday. I might do a video for Friday. I don't know. I might end up just doing it live. I just want to get us. I want to make sure that we're done with 16 before I take my break, which will be coming up in a couple weeks. The 18th, Sunday the 18th, will be my last Sunday for a couple weeks. So I want to make sure I get us through Mark before we get to that point. That's not going to happen if I don't shut up and get to it, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shut up and get to it. And we're gonna turn to Mark chapter 8. And you're going to notice in chapter 8, excuse me, some of those things I've mentioned, like when we first started talking about Mark, that immediately concept, that, right now and immediately. That it comes up in this passage a couple different times, and Jesus on the move. They're moving from here to there and back again, and it's hard to keep straight where exactly Jesus is as you read through it. Maps help, but even maps aren't perfect for us. They don't completely take away our confusion, because some of the town names and stuff are unknown. We don't use them anymore, and they're one of our normal attendees is having trouble with Facebook this morning. Don't know why. Let me send that person a quick reply just to let her know. Bummer. I'm going to suggest that you try YouTube just in case. Try YouTube, question mark. If not, hopefully she'll be able to catch the video later. It's a bummer. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, moving back and forth. Sometimes the maps help because it we can see some of that motion, and other times they don't, because we're kind of guessing. They don't use the same names anymore for the places. There's not enough geographical clues to exactly where something was. And some things are just missing from the maps. So in fact, they mention a town in this passage here. I don't know where it is. I haven't found a map that shows it. I probably should do more research on that, but I didn't. Anyway, so Mark chapter 8, and it's another miracle story. About this time, another large crowd had gathered, and the people ran out of food again. Jesus called his disciples and told them, I feel sorry for these people. They have been here with me for 3 days, and they have nothing left to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will faint along the way, for some of them have come a long distance. His disciples replied, how are we supposed to find enough food to feed them out here in the wilderness? Jesus asked, how much bread do you have? 7 loaves, they replied. So Jesus told all the people to sit down on the ground. Then he took the 7 loaves, thanked God for them, and broke them into pieces. He gave them to his disciples, who distributed the bread to the crowd. A few small fish were found too. So Jesus also blessed these and told the disciples to distribute them. They ate as much as they wanted. Afterward, the disciples picked up 7 large baskets of leftover food. There were about 4,000 people in the crowd that day, and Jesus sent them home after they had eaten. Immediately after this, he got into a boat with his disciples and crossed over to the region of Dalmanutha. Pause. That's the place that I have no idea where it is. I am gonna show you, share my map, share my screen for you this morning. Excuse me a moment here. But I am going to share my screen here and see what that does. See if that helps. All right. So Jesus had been in the Sea of Galilee, or near the Sea of Galilee, but in the region of the 10 cities, which is down here, the Decapolis. All right. So presumably Dalmanutha is somewhere in this, because it doesn't say that he left that area to go somewhere else. So we can kind of presume that this Dalmanutha has taken place down in this region down here. But not 100% sure on that, okay? So Mark, just a couple chapters before, had mentioned, talked about, did the story of the feeding of the 5,000. And now we have another feeding miracle, mass feeding, 4,000 people, right? And why? Why does Mark tell 2 stories? Well, quite possibly because it happened twice. I mean, that would be the literal rendering of this. But it's also it's crafted very well. It's crafted very well, this whole thing. The similarities and differences between the two feeding stories. And I'm going to tell you the whole thing, even though we didn't get to the whole thing yet. If you look back at Mark 6 and 7, Mark 6 and 7, with the feeding of the 5,000 and what takes place after. Jesus was over here in Galilee, okay, in Jewish territory, when he fed the 5,000. Following it, what happens? Well, he puts his disciples into the boat, and they start to cross the sea, but then he walks on the water and catches up to them. So we've got him doing the feeding miracle, getting in a boat. Then after that, he has some trouble with the Pharisees again. Then he does a healing miracle. And just to remind you, it's the woman the Syrophoenician woman, a Gentile woman, because he went from down here, he went up top to Tyre in Sidon, the Syrophoenicia. That's where he met this woman and healed her daughter from a distance, right? He also heals a deaf man down here in the Decapolis. Down here in the Decapolis. And it shows up as Magadan, just below Capernaum. Okay. So the feeding took place in Jewish territory. Then he went to Tyre and he healed the woman's daughter. But what was part of the discussion? Jesus said, "I'm not supposed to give the bread. I'm not supposed to feed the animals. Throw bread to the dogs, right?" And the woman says, "Yes, but even the dogs are allowed to eat the scraps. Are allowed to eat the scraps." So this feeding miracle presumably takes place in Gentile territory. This feeding story takes place in Gentile territory. So it's a contrast between feeding Jews and feeding Gentiles. So what Mark is doing by shaping this story in the way he did, is crafting his story in the way he did. It's kind of showing that the scraps from the master's table are sufficient, are plentiful, and can reach to the Gentiles. Okay. And as we continue chapter 8, we're going to see that again. So again, chapter 6 into 7, chapter 6 and 7, we have the feeding, we have them getting into a boat, we have Jesus encountering Pharisees and having a problem with them, and then healing a deaf man, okay, somebody who's suffering from a loss of one of their senses, the inability to hear. As we continue this story, we see Jesus feeding a multitude, Gentiles presumably, getting in a boat, encountering Pharisees again, and then another healing story, this time of a blind person. So it's another person, it's another healing of someone who has lost their senses, lost the ability to sense things. So I'm going to let you think about what that might mean for a moment as I go back to reading. All right. So when the Pharisees heard that Jesus had arrived, they came and started to argue with him. Testing him, they demanded that he show them a miraculous sign from heaven to prove his authority. When he heard this, he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why do these people keep demanding a miraculous sign? I tell you the truth, I will not give this generation any such sign." So he got back into the boat and left them, and he crossed to the other side of the lake. But the disciples had forgotten to bring any food. They had only one loaf of bread with them in the boat. As they were crossing the lake, Jesus warned them, "Watch out, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod." At this, they began to argue with each other because they hadn't brought any bread. Sorry, turn my page. Jesus knew what they were saying, so he said, "Why are you arguing about having no bread? Don't you know or understand even yet? Are your hearts too hard to take it in? You have eyes, can't you see? You have ears, can't you hear? Don't you remember anything at all when I fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves of bread? How many baskets of leftovers did you pick up afterward? 12, they said. And when I fed the 4,000 with 7 loaves, how many large baskets of leftovers did you pick up? 7, they said. Don't you understand yet? He asked them. Pause. What did Jesus ask them? You have eyes, can't you see? You have ears, can't you hear? He just healed a deaf man. Now he's going to heal a blind man. Continuing, when they arrived at Bethsaida, some people brought a blind man to Jesus and they begged him to touch the man and heal him. Jesus took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. Then, spitting on the man's eyes, he laid his hands on him and asked, Can you see anything now? The man looked around. Yes, he said, I see people, but I can't see them very clearly. They look like trees walking around. Then Jesus placed his hands on the man's eyes again, and the eyes were opened. His sight was completely restored, and he could see everything clearly. Jesus sent him away, saying, Don't go back into the village on your way home. Pause. So he heals a blind man. You know, Lockett's made out of the fact that it took like a double, like a sort of a double healing in order to heal the man completely. There's a lot of made out of that, and there's multiple explanations. One is that Jesus gives us the healing we need in the way we need it. Okay, and perhaps this man, just needed to have that reassurance, needed to have the experience, the double experience, in order to get it, so to speak. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. In order to get it here and here, he needed to have it as a double healing. Others would say that it was Mark used that or said that in order to show that it wasn't just like something in the man's eyes, so to speak, but it was a deeper healing took place, because it was a complete blindness rather than only like a partial blindness, we might say. But more important is the fact that of the two different kinds of healings, it's a healing of the ears, a healing of hearing, and a healing of sight. And Jesus just told the disciples, you got eyes, you can't see, you got ears, can't you hear? And it goes back to the Old Testament. I think it was Isaiah. These people have eyes, but they cannot see. They have ears, but they cannot hear. So there's that echo, that scriptural echo coming out in this whole thing. Okay, I guess I should have kept sharing my screen. Sorry about that. I'm going to do it again because Jesus is on the move. Jesus is on the move. After crossing the sea, it's presumed he's over here somewhere. He's in the Galilean area. That took place. That story took place at Bethsaida, which is borderline, not quite Galilee, at least according to this map. But Mark says they left from Galilee. So who knows? Maybe there was a little time passage and they went here. But it does say that he then went up to Caesarea Philippi, which is pretty far north, definitely not in Galilee. This would have been in the area, the Tetrarchy of Philip, hence the name Philippi. And it's basically just here on the edge of the mountain region. You can see on the map here, Mount Hermon is marked up here, which is part of a range of mountains up here in the Northern Territory. And Caesarea Philippi is just at the base of where those mountains begin. Okay, so again, Jesus is on the move, never sits still. So picking back up at verse 27, Jesus and his disciples left Galilee and went up to the villages near Caesarea Philippi. As they were walking around, he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" Well, they replied, some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, and others say you are one of the other prophets. Pause if you, or a brief aside, if you joined us for worship on Sunday, you'll recognize this text. I didn't use the Mark text, I don't think, but same thing. Then he asked them, but who do you say I am? Peter replied, you are the Messiah. Peter gets it right. But Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. Then Jesus began to tell them that the Son of Man, his self-referential statement, must suffer many terrible things and be rejected by the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but 3 days later, he would rise from the dead. As he talked about this openly with his disciples, Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Pause. So Peter just got it right? He just got it right. Said, oh, you are the Messiah. Now he's getting it wrong. He's getting it wrong. He's telling Jesus it can't happen this way. Luke or Matthew gets more specific. They put in some details of what Peter said. This can't be. The key thing here, though, is Mark's use of this term reprimand. At least that's how NLT translates it. In Greek, it's the same word that is used when Jesus casts out demons. Okay, so Peter is reprimanding Jesus. He's treating Jesus as if he was demon possessed, as if he was crazy. So Peter is reacting to Jesus the same way Jesus's family did. Thinking that he was crazy. Something's wrong with you, man. So Peter's words are pretty strong. Watch Jesus's reply. Jesus turned around and looked at his disciples, then reprimanded Peter. Get away from me, Satan. Pause. Again, that word reprimand, it's the same word that Jesus uses when he's talking to demons. It's the same word that Jesus uses when he's talking to demons. Blah, blah, blah. And update. Our friend Marcia, who has usually joins us on Facebook and had trouble, was unable to do it, is joining us through YouTube. So great. Good morning, Marcia. Good to see you that you're able to get in there. Wonderful. So Jesus, not only does Peter use the word to Jesus, not that it has any effect, but Jesus is using the same word to Peter, basically saying, you're the one that's demon possessed. Get behind me, Satan. Get away from me, Satan. Get away from me, Satan. Don't be trying to tempt me or test me in any way. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's. Pause, which is interesting because I don't remember now if it's in the same story appears in Matthew and Luke as well. Usually, and in the same place, right around the Transfiguration, just before the Transfiguration. In that version, when Peter has his declaration, when Peter gets it right and says, "You're the Messiah, the Son of God," Jesus's reply to him is, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, because you didn't get this on your own. God gave it to you. God's the one that told you that. You didn't figure it out on your own." And yet, 10 seconds later, Jesus is saying, you're not seeing things from God's point of view. You're no longer getting God's message. You're trying to get your own message. You're getting the message from the world rather than a message from God this time. It didn't take long for Peter to go back to his old way, we might say. So continuing, then calling the crowd to join his disciples, he said, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. Take up your cross and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake and for the sake of the good news, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul. Is anything worth more than your soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my message in these adulterous and sinful days, the Son of Man will be ashamed of that person when he returns in glory. When he returns in the glory of his Father with the heavenly angels. And we're going to read the first verse of chapter 9 because it kind of goes with this. Jesus went on to say, I tell you the truth, some standing here right now will not die before they see the kingdom of God arrive in great power. End of chapter 8 and beginning of chapter 9. Pause. And, again, sometimes they, that medieval person who came up with when chapters and verses ends didn't get it right. And you can see in that reading how well that verse from chapter 9 actually fits with the end of chapter 8. It finishes Jesus's statement. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, really. So we'll pick up from there tomorrow. But anyway, getting back to this. So, Jesus has this declaration. Peter thought that, as they all did, really, thought that things for the Messiah would be good and easy, and everything was going to be fine, and you're the boss, you're coming here to take over, whereas the Messiah, the Christ, is different. The Christ fits the image of the suffering servant, so beautifully and wonderfully put forward in Isaiah 52 and 53. He exemplifies that character perfectly. If you go back to read Isaiah 52 and 53, which we often do on Good Friday, and I did the other day on Good Friday, if you watch that, you can see how clearly those words apply to Jesus. However, those words weren't specifically meant for Jesus. They were meant for Israel, that this is the kind of people you are to be. To be God's chosen, to be God's servant, you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer. So Jesus is making that clear with his speech here, talking about picking up and carrying your cross. He just said how things are going to go for him. Don't think things are going to go easy for you as my disciple, as my follower. You need to pick up your cross and carry it. It will be a burden. Being a true disciple and follower of Jesus, not just a Christian, but being a disciple, often leads to suffering. It seems paradoxical to be chosen, to be part of the elect, as the word that Paul uses, and yet to be the one who suffers. But the way of Christ, as St. John of the Cross describes it, is a path that leads to the cross, and each in our own way. And no, that doesn't mean not being allowed, quote unquote, to say Merry Christmas. You're allowed to say Merry Christmas. That's not suffering. That's not a cross. That's not a cross to bear. We each have to find out what our cross truly is and pick it up, but it involves discipleship in some way, and usually involves suffering in some way. Now that last part, that verse 1, I tell you that some that are here will not die until they see the kingdom of God in all of its glory. Jesus is probably talking about something different than we might think. We obviously think of the end of times and God's the complete fulfillment of the kingdom of God. He's probably talking about just the partial completion, if that's a way of saying it, the partial fulfillment of the kingdom of God as seen through what John refers to as his glorification, which was his crucifixion. Because when you're reading John and he talks about the glory and the glory and the glory, to be glorified, John isn't talking about the resurrection. John is talking about the crucifixion. But I would add the resurrection to that as being part of the kingdom of God, and that is probably what Jesus/Mark is referring to in verse 1 of chapter 9, saying that some here aren't going to die until they see the kingdom of God, until they see Jesus's crucifixion and resurrection. At least those are my thoughts. I'm not the only one that thinks that either. Well, you are welcome, and you are welcome. Great to have everybody here this morning. That's it for chapter 8. Again, I pray that this has been beneficial to you, that God has spoken to you through something that I have said today, and something that you have read today. As you go about your day today, keep your eyes and ears open, physical and spiritual. Don't be like the disciples. Don't let God say about you, you have eyes, can't you see? You have ears, can't you hear? When you see what God is doing in your life and in the life of those around you, say, thank you, Papa. And then tell us about it. We want to hear. We need to hear. Until tomorrow, my friends, be blessed. Be blessed.